The first time Lena felt someone watching her, it wasn't dramatic. No music, no sudden turn. Just a quiet pressure in the air, like the room had leaned slightly in her direction. It was a Tuesday evening in Seattle, the kind that smelled like rain and coffee. Lena sat in a folding chair at the back of a small bookstore, pretending to listen while her mind drifted. Book club was ending. People were packing bags, laughing softly, checking phones. That was when she felt it. She looked up. Across the room, a man sat still, his attention fixed on her. Not in a rude way, not intense. Just steady, calm, as if he had been there longer than she realized, waiting for this exact second. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he smiled, slow, careful, almost surprised. Lena's chest tightened. She looked away first, annoyed at herself. She told herself it meant nothing. She was tired, overthinking. People look at people. That's life. Still, the feeling stayed. She felt it on the bus ride home, the city lights sliding past wet windows. She felt it while unlocking her apartment door, while heating leftover pasta, while brushing her teeth. That sense of being seen didn't fade. It followed her, quiet but present. She tried to forget it, but she couldn't forget him. His name, she learned later, was Ethan Brooks. She overheard it the next week when someone greeted him. He worked in tech, lived nearby, and rarely spoke unless he had something worth saying. He didn't dominate the room. He didn't perform. He just existed comfortable in his space. And he watched. Lena noticed him everywhere after that. At the cafe on Pine Street, where she stopped most mornings, he would sit near the window with a notebook and black coffee. Sometimes, he wrote. Sometimes he just stared out at the street. When she entered, his eyes lifted. Not fast, not slow. Just enough to say he had noticed her. At the grocery store, she passed him once in the produce aisle. Their carts paused side by side. He nodded, polite. She nodded back. No words, but her heart beat faster for reasons she couldn't explain. She told herself she didn't like it. Being watched. Being noticed. But that wasn't true. What unsettled her was how safe it felt. Lena was 32 and recently single. Not freshly broken, but still sore in quiet places. She had learned to protect her space, her time, her emotions. She didn't rush toward attention anymore. She didn't chase sparks. Yet Ethan's attention didn't feel like a spark. It felt like warmth that had been there all along, waiting to be noticed. One afternoon, the moment finally broke its silence. The cafe was crowded. Rain poured outside, heavy and loud. Lena stood at the counter, digging through her bag for her wallet. When she turned to leave, something slipped from her shoulder and fell to the floor. Her scarf. Before she noticed, someone picked it up. "Hey," a voice said behind her. "I think this is yours." She turned. Ethan stood there, holding the scarf with both hands, like it mattered. His voice was gentle, careful not to startle her. "Oh, thanks," she said, surprised by how soft her own voice sounded. Their fingers brushed as she took it. The contact lasted less than a second, but it felt heavy. "Real, I'm Ethan," he said, as if offering his name meant something important. "Lena," she replied. They smiled at each other. Not wide, not nervous. Just honest. For a moment, the noise of the cafe faded. The clatter of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low hum of conversation, all of it blurred. There was only this small space between them. "Well," he said, stepping back, giving her room. "Have a good day." "You too," she replied. That was it. No long talk. No exchange of numbers. No forced moment. She walked out into the rain, scarf wrapped tighter around her neck. She didn't look back, but she knew she could feel it. His eyes followed her until the door closed. That night, she lay awake longer than usual. She replayed the moment, annoyed at herself for caring. It was nothing. A polite interaction. A name, a smile. Still, she wondered what he saw when he looked at her. The next book club meeting felt different. She arrived early without meaning to. So did he. They sat 2 chairs apart. Close enough to feel aware. Far enough to stay safe. During the discussion, she caught him glancing her way when she spoke. Not judging, listening. After the meeting, people lingered. Someone spilled tea. Someone laughed too loudly. Ethan stood near the door, adjusting his jacket. "You liked the ending?" he asked suddenly. She turned, surprised. "What?" "The book," he said, smiling slightly. "You mentioned the ending last time." She blinked. He remembered. "Yeah," she said. "I did." It felt honest. He nodded. "That's what I thought too." They talked for 5 minutes. About books. About how hard it was to find time to read. About nothing important. Everything. Then someone interrupted and the moment broke. Still, something had changed. Over the next few weeks, the distance between watching and knowing grew smaller. Not rushed. Not forced. Just steady. Lena noticed details about Ethan she hadn't before. The way he rubbed his thumb against his coffee cup when thinking. The way he laughed quietly, like he didn't need attention for it. The way his eyes softened when she spoke, as if her words landed somewhere meaningful. She also noticed herself changing. She stopped pretending not to look for him when she entered a room. She started choosing the cafe window seats. She felt lighter, even on days nothing happened. But she was careful. Watching was easy. Letting someone step closer was not. One evening after book club, they walked out together. The streetlights glowed against wet pavement. The city felt calm, almost gentle. "I used to think you didn't like me," Lena said suddenly, surprising herself. Ethan stopped walking. "Why?" "You always watched," she said. "But you never said anything." He looked thoughtful, not offended. "I didn't want to assume," he said. "Or push. Sometimes watching is safer than risking the wrong moment." She nodded. She understood that more than she wanted to admit. They stood there, the air cool between them. "Well," he said softly, "I'm glad I said something this time." "So am I," she replied. They went their separate ways after that, but Lena's heart stayed awake long after her body rested. Because now she knew something she hadn't before. He wasn't just watching. He was waiting. And for the first time in a long while, Lena wondered if she was ready to be seen. Not just briefly, not from across a room, but fully. The thought scared her. It also made her smile. And somewhere in the quiet space between curiosity and courage, a new story was beginning. The first time Lena realized she was watching him back, she almost didn't admit it to herself or anyone else. Ethan had been a quiet presence in her life for weeks, appearing in places she frequented, always careful, never intrusive. But that evening, as she sat in the cafe on Pine Street, notebook open, coffee steaming, she caught herself scanning the room before even noticing her own page. And there he was, Ethan, across the room watching, not like before. This time she wanted him to. The moment hit her differently than it ever had. The past weeks had been a slow dance of glances, brief smiles, and polite exchanges. She had learned his rhythms, how he ordered black coffee, how he lingered near the window, how he watched people with curiosity rather than judgment. But now, when their eyes met, it wasn't just noticing. It was a conversation without words, a challenge, a question hanging in the air. Who will move first? Lena smiled faintly, trying to keep her composure, but her heart betrayed her. Ethan returned the smile, not wide, not flustered, just steady, quiet, but full of something that made her chest ache in an unfamiliar way. She had started to feel the pull of anticipation, that subtle thrill that comes when someone notices you fully. When the silence between two people is louder than any conversation could be. That night she couldn't sleep. She replayed the brief moments in her mind, the brush of his fingers when she took her scarf, snot in the grocery store, the way he seemed to anticipate her arrival at the cafe. Every gesture had been small, but together they formed something she couldn't name, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Days turned into a week, and the pattern continued. She found herself arriving early to the book club, deliberately choosing seats that allowed her to see him without being obvious. Ethan was there before her every time. The air between them was quiet but charged. They exchanged words, now small talk, that hinted at larger truths. like the way he asked if she had finished the book or mentioned how he had spotted her favorite pastry at the cafe. Each word felt carefully placed, thoughtful, intentional. One rainy afternoon. The city dampened and gray. They found themselves alone after book club. The bookstore emptied faster than usual, leaving them standing among shelves of novels and soft lamplight. Lena hesitated, unsure whether to speak first. The pause stretched, comfortable yet tense. Finally, she said, "I never realized how much I noticed. Until I noticed you noticing me." Ethan's brows lifted slightly, then softened. "I guess we've both been careful," he said. Watching, waiting, trying not to rush it. Lena smiled a little wryly, a little nervously. "And now?" she asked. "What now?" He studied her face for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he said, "Now. We see where it leads. We stop hiding behind glances." That line, simple as it was, carried a weight that settled between them, like warm sunlight. Lena realized that being watched, having someone silently admire her from a distance, had been safe. But now the space between watching and connecting had begun to close. The risk felt thrilling, terrifying, and inevitable. The next week, she saw him in new ways. In the cafe, he laughed softly at a joke someone told at the next table. She noticed the crinkles around his eyes, the way his lips curved naturally without effort. At the farmer's market, he helped an elderly woman pick the ripest tomatoes, quietly, without anyone noticing. Each small act revealed layers of him. She hadn't expected a kindness, a patience, a steadiness that called to the parts of her that longed for something real. Lena started watching, too, not just in fleeting moments, but intentionally. She noticed how he arranged his notebook, the way his coffee steamed in the dim morning light, how he leaned slightly when listening to someone. The curiosity that had once been one-sided now flowed both ways. She wanted to know him, not in bursts or glimpses, but fully in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the spaces where real people existed. Not just their shadows. It wasn't long before they started sharing small moments beyond the book club. Short walks to the nearby park, casual talks at the cafe, conversations about music and films, about childhood memories in Portland and Toronto. The distance between them continued to shrink. Each interaction was light on the surface, but heavy with meaning beneath. Every laugh shared was an unspoken admission, every silence a gentle acknowledgement of connection. One evening, after a light drizzle, they walked together under the string lights of the neighborhood square. The city was quiet, only the hum of distant traffic and the occasional clatter of a passing bike. Lena glanced at him, the soft glow from the lights catching the edges of his face. There was something in the way he held himself, relaxed but alert, steady but open, that made her heart skip. "I used to think you were judging me," she confessed suddenly, almost as if she couldn't hold it in anymore. Ethan paused, turning to meet her gaze. "Judging," he repeated, curiosity softening the tone of his voice. "Yeah," she said, taking a breath. "Watching, always watching, like I was part of some story you weren't ready to join." He didn't flinch, didn't turn away. Instead, he took a step closer, just enough that their conversation felt intimate without a word said about proximity. "I wasn't judging," he admitted. "I was trying to understand, trying to see someone without assuming. Watching seems safer than stepping into something I might ruin." Her chest tightened. She could hear the honesty in his words, the careful restraint. That quiet, honester, unforced was something she had been craving, though she hadn't known it. "I think I understand now," she said softly. "And I think I want to stop running from it. From noticing, from being noticed." For a long moment, they just stood there. Rain dripped gently from the nearby awnings, mixing with the faint scent of wet earth and city air. The silence was comfortable, but charged. Like electricity before a storm passes. "I'm glad," Ethan said finally, his voice low, steady. "Because I've been waiting for that. Not watching anymore, waiting, hoping you'd notice me too." Lena's heart leaped. The quiet ache she had carried for weeks, the anticipation, the curiosity, The faint longing, all of it, settled into something tangible. Hope, possibility, connection. From that night on, the way they interacted shifted. The subtle glances became shared smiles. The polite distance transformed into intentional presence. They were learning each other, slowly, carefully. But with intention, Lena found herself imagining afternoons spent together without reason. Mornings when he would appear by the cafe without planning. Conversations that stretched late into the evening under the soft glow of streetlights. Each thought brought warmth, a sense of anticipation, quiet thrill. Ethan, too, started to open up in ways he hadn't before. He shared stories of his childhood, dreams he had shelved for practicality, and small fears he usually kept hidden. Lena listened, not just with politeness, but with real curiosity, matching his honesty with her own. In these moments, watching had transformed into understanding. And understanding into connection. One night, Lena stood at her apartment window, watching the rain streak down the glass. She saw him waiting at the corner cafe, just as he always did, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. Posture relaxed, yet expectant. She realized that for weeks she had been caught in the tension between curiosity and fear. But now she was ready. Ready to step outside to close the gap between watching and choosing, between waiting and being seen. Because watching was one thing. Choosing to be part of each other's lives, that was something entirely different. She grabbed her coat, heart pounding, feeling the excitement that comes with risk and hope intertwined. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, just enough to cool her cheeks. She took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped into the night. Ethan looked up immediately, and when their eyes met, it was no longer the hesitant watch of strangers or the polite glances of acquaintances. It was recognition, connection, a quiet agreement that something real was beginning. No words were needed. The moment carried enough weight to fill the space between them, heavy, warm, and full of possibility. Lena smiled, feeling the same anticipation, the same fluttering excitement she had felt when she first realized she had been noticed. But now the power had shifted. Now she would be the one to show him that he mattered. And as they walked toward each other, under the softly glowing lights of the Seattle streets, the story that had begun with quiet glances and patient watching finally moved forward. The distance between two people, measured in small gestures and silent anticipation, had begun to close. And for the first time, Lena understood that some stories didn't need to explode into drama or chaos. To be unforgettable, they simply needed hearts willing to notice, to wait, and finally to step forward. The city hummed around them, the rain tapping softly against windows and sidewalks, as if the world itself was acknowledging that something new, tender, and real was beginning. Lena felt it, Ethan felt it, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. They were no longer watching each other from a distance. They were walking together into a story of their own making, one step at a time, full of possibility, hope, and quiet unfolding romance. It was the beginning of everything.